I came home to find my 7 months pregnant wife gone. Her car in the garage, her purse on the kitchen counter, her phone still inside, and a note that changed everything. We have your wife. You have 48 hours. $500,000. Don't call police. We're watching. And if you try anything, the baby dies with her. That last line, those 7 words, they destroyed me in a way I didn't know was possible. I read it 5 times, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The paper fell to the floor. I stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Violet had made pancakes that morning, where she'd laughed at something on her phone, where everything had been normal just 12 hours ago, and I felt my entire world collapse. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I should have called the police immediately. The note said not to. It said they were watching. But what choice did I have? My wife was gone. My unborn child was in danger. I called 911 with a voice I didn't recognize, hollow, broken, barely human. Detective Oliver arrived with 2 uniformed officers. He was mid-50s, weathered, with eyes that had seen too many cases like this. He read the note carefully, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Has anything unusual happened recently?" he asked. "Anyone threatening your wife? Any conflicts at work? Financial trouble?" I shook my head to everything. But inside, I knew I was lying. There had been something. Something I'd been ignoring because ignoring it was easier than confronting it. Violet had changed 3 months ago. Subtle at first. She'd started keeping her phone close, taking calls in the bedroom with the door closed. She'd asked me strange questions about my work schedule, whether I'd be home late, if I had any plans coming up. At the time, I'd thought it was just pregnancy paranoia. Women get anxious when they're expecting. Now those details felt sinister, like pieces of a puzzle I'd been too stupid to assemble. "Your marriage," Oliver said quietly. "Is it solid?" I hesitated. That hesitation was a confession. "Why?" I asked. "Because in my experience, kidnappings like this aren't random. Someone knew your wife's routine. Someone knew she'd be home alone. Someone knew you'd have access to money." His words twisted in my stomach. He was right. This wasn't random. This was personal. The ransom call came at 3 a.m. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. My heart nearly stopped. "Listen carefully," a distorted voice said. "Your wife is safe. For now. You have until tomorrow night to gather $500,000. We'll contact you with pickup instructions. If you involve police again, if you trace this call, if you do anything stupid, your wife and your unborn child will suffer consequences you can't imagine." "I want to speak to her," I demanded. "I need to know she's alive." There was a pause. Then Violet's voice came through the speaker. Terrified. Broken. "Baby, they have me. The baby, I'm so scared. Please, just do what they..." The line cut off. "Violet," I screamed into the phone. "Violet." But she was gone. I spent the next 36 hours in a nightmare. I liquidated my savings. Borrowed from my father. Took out loans. Max credit cards. The money piled up in a duffel bag on my kitchen table. $500,000 in cash that represented everything I'd worked for, everything we'd built together. It meant nothing. It was worthless compared to her life, compared to our baby's life. FBI agents set up equipment in my house. They told me not to pay. They said it would encourage more kidnappings. They said the statistics showed victims often weren't released even after ransom was paid. I told them I didn't care about statistics. I cared about my wife and my child. They exchanged glances like I was naive. Maybe I was. Detective Oliver pulled me aside on the evening of day 2. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest," he said. "Has your wife ever been involved with anyone dangerous? Anyone from her past? Anyone who might have reason to do this?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Because the answer was yes. I knew it. I'd known it for months. There had been someone. A man named Tristan who Violet had dated before we met. He was wealthy, connected, and according to rumors I tried hard to ignore, involved in things that weren't entirely legal. They'd ended on bad terms. She'd told me that years ago, and I'd accepted it and moved on. But what if he hadn't? I don't know. I lied to Oliver. I don't think so. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded like he knew I was holding something back, but didn't have time to push it. The pickup instructions came at 11:47 p.m. Morrison Street Warehouse. South Side. Come alone with the money. Midnight. Leave it by the south entrance. Walk away. Your wife will be released once we confirm the cash. How do I know she's alive? I demanded. You don't, the voice said. You just have to have faith. Faith. Like that meant anything when my wife was being held by strangers threatening to hurt my unborn child. I walked toward that warehouse with the duffel bag heavy on my shoulders. The street was empty. Industrial. Dead. My footsteps echoed off concrete. Behind me, FBI agents were positioned, ready to move if things went wrong. Oliver had promised they'd handle it carefully, that Violet would be safe. I left the money by the south entrance. I turned to walk away. That's when the first gunshot exploded through the night air. Then another, and another. I spun around and saw figures moving in the darkness. The kidnappers, scrambling, confused. But they weren't being shot by police. Someone else was taking them down. Someone efficient, brutal, lethal. A figure emerged from the shadows of the warehouse, silhouetted against the flashing police lights. Tall, moving with precision, deadly. The kidnappers fell one by one. And when it was over, when the chaos finally settled, the figure emerged from the warehouse holding my wife. But then they turned to face the police lights, and I saw their face. I didn't recognize them, but Violet did. She looked at this person like she knew them, like she was grateful to them, like there was a connection between them that ran deeper than just a rescue. And in that moment, as my wife stumbled toward me with tears streaming down her face, I realized something that made my blood run ice cold. This stranger had known exactly where to be, exactly when to arrive, exactly how to take down professional kidnappers without hesitation. This wasn't a rescue. This was a planned operation, and my wife was somehow connected to it. The warehouse was cold, colder than any place I'd ever been. I'd lost track of time hours ago, maybe days. My phone was gone. My watch was gone. There was nothing to mark the passing of hours except the rhythm of my own breathing and the sound of footsteps above me on the concrete floor. I was in a basement. Concrete walls. A single bulb hanging from the ceiling casting everything in sickly yellow light. There was a mattress in the corner with no sheets. A bucket for a toilet. And chains. Heavy chains attached to the wall with enough length for me to move maybe 10 feet in any direction. My name is Violet, and I was 7 months pregnant when they took me. The men who brought me here didn't speak much. 3 of them. They wore masks, but I could see their eyes. Cold eyes. Professional eyes. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated. Planned. Someone had hired them to take me, and they were executing the job with brutal efficiency. Your husband will pay, one of them said when they chained me to the wall. 500,000. That's his valuation of you. That's what you're worth. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. That I was worth more than money. That my baby was worth more than money. But my voice wouldn't work. Terror had stolen it from me. The first night, I didn't sleep. I sat on that filthy mattress with my hands on my swollen belly, trying to feel our baby move, trying to convince myself that my child was still alive inside me. Still fighting. Still holding on. The pregnancy had been planned. Wanted. Our baby was supposed to be born in 2 months to a safe home with parents who loved each other. Now I wasn't sure if my baby would ever be born at all. On what I think was the second day, one of the men came down with water and a protein bar. He set them on the ground and stepped back like I was dangerous. Like a 7 months pregnant woman chained to a wall was a threat. Eat, he said. We need you healthy. For leverage. Leverage. That's all I was. Not a person. Not a mother. Not a wife. Just leverage. But I ate anyway. Not for them. For my baby. Every bite was an act of defiance. Every sip of water was a promise to my child that I wouldn't give up, that I would survive this, that we would survive this. The isolation was worse than the physical conditions. There were no windows in that basement. No way to know if it was day or night outside. No way to know if my husband was trying to save me. No way to know if anyone was coming. The silence was suffocating. It gave my mind room to imagine the worst. What if he didn't pay? What if he paid, but they killed me anyway? What if something happened to him? What if no one was coming? On what I calculated was the third day, the man who seemed to be in charge came downstairs. He was taller than the others, with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. He pulled up a chair, an actual chair, and sat across from me like we were having a conversation. "Your husband loves you very much," he said. "He's gathering the money. But I want to know something." He leaned closer, and I could smell cigarette smoke and coffee on his breath. "Does he know about Tristan?" My entire body went rigid. The question hung in the air between us like a blade. "Does he know you were sleeping with him?" The man continued. "Does your husband know that Tristan's the one who hired us to take you?" The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Tristan was my past. Ancient history. He was someone I'd loved and left and moved on from years ago. I was married. I was building a life with my husband. Tristan was gone. But even as I thought it, I knew I was lying to myself. Because Tristan had called me 3 months ago. Out of nowhere. He was in the city. He wanted to see me. "Just for coffee," he said. "Just to catch up." And like an idiot, like a woman who'd forgotten who she was married to or what she owed to her vows, I'd agreed. One coffee became two. 2 coffees became lunches. Lunches became hotel rooms. It started as nostalgia and weakness, and it became something I couldn't control. Tristan was exciting in a way my husband wasn't. Dangerous. Unpredictable. He made me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. And then I got pregnant, and I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. "No," I whispered to the man in the basement. "My husband doesn't know." "He does now," the man said with a smile that made my skin crawl. "And Tristan wants something from him. The money is just a down payment. There's more coming. Much more." He stood up and walked toward the stairs. "Oh, and Violet." He turned back to look at me. "If your baby is a boy, Tristan wants to raise him. If it's a girl, well, we'll figure that out later." He left me alone with that nightmare, and I finally understood the depth of what I'd done. My affair wasn't just a betrayal of my husband. It wasn't just a moment of weakness. It was a catastrophe. It was a chain reaction that had led here, to this basement, to these chains, to the violation of my body and the theft of my future. I curled up on that mattress and held my baby, whispering apologies that no one could hear. "I'm sorry," I told my child. "I'm so sorry. I promise you, whatever happens to me, you will survive this. You will get out of here. You will be born safe." I didn't know if I could keep that promise, but I was determined to try. Hours later, or maybe minutes, time had stopped meaning anything. I heard the first gunshot. Distant, muffled, but real. Then more gunshots. Shouting. Chaos. The man with the scar came rushing down the stairs, panic in his eyes for the first time since he'd brought me here. "Stay quiet," he hissed. "Don't make a sound." But I knew. Somehow I knew. Someone was coming for me. Someone was taking apart this operation piece by piece. And as the violence erupted above my head, I felt something unexpected rise in my chest. Not hope. Not yet. But maybe the first flicker of it. Maybe the beginning of a chance. 48 hours. That's what the note said. 48 hours to gather $500,000, or I'd never see my wife again. I'd done it in 36. I'd liquidated everything that mattered, cashed in retirement accounts, borrowed from people I'd never wanted to owe, and I still wasn't sure it would be enough. The money sat in a duffel bag on my kitchen table. $500,000. My life's work compressed into stacks of $100 bills. Detective Oliver stood in my living room with 2 FBI agents, a woman named Paige with cold eyes, and a man named Mason who kept checking his phone. They'd set up surveillance equipment, tracking devices, and contingency plans. They talked about protocols and best practices while I stared at the bag of money and tried not to fall apart. "We need to discuss what happens if they don't release her," Paige said flatly. "They will," I said. "They have to. Statistically speaking." Mason started, but I cut him off. I don't care about statistics. That's my wife. That's my child. They will release her. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. The kidnapper's words echoed in my head. You just have to have faith. Faith. Like that meant anything in a world where my pregnant wife was chained in some basement while men who wanted to hurt her sat around deciding her fate. Oliver pulled me aside while the FBI agents were reviewing surveillance footage from the neighborhood. I've been doing this for 28 years, he said quietly. And I need to tell you something. These aren't amateurs. The way this was executed, the timing, the knowledge of your routine, the professionalism. This is someone who knew your wife. Someone with inside information. My stomach twisted. What are you saying? I'm saying your wife might not be as innocent in this as you think. Has she ever mentioned being involved with anyone dangerous? Anyone from before you two met? The question felt like a punch. Because I already knew the answer. I'd known for weeks. I'd just been too much of a coward to admit it. There was someone, I finally said. A guy named Tristan. They dated years ago. It ended badly. But that was before we met. It has nothing to do with this. Oliver's expression didn't change, but I saw something shift in his eyes. Recognition. Confirmation of something he already suspected. Tristan who? He asked. I don't know his last name. Violet never talked about him. I know he was wealthy, involved in some kind of business. That's all I know. I'll look into it, Oliver said. But I want you to prepare yourself. Whatever's happening here, your wife might be connected to it in ways you don't understand yet. The pickup instructions came at 11:47 p.m., just like they said they would. Just like they'd predicted every move, every reaction, every moment of my desperation. Morrison Street Warehouse. South Side. Midnight. Come alone. Leave the money. Walk away. I drove there in Detective Oliver's unmarked car. The duffel bag sat on the passenger seat. $500,000 in exchange for my wife's life and my child's future. It seemed impossible that something so simple could matter so much. That money, which I'd spent my entire adult life accumulating, which represented security and stability and the American dream, meant absolutely nothing now. We'll have agents positioned around the perimeter, Paige said through my earpiece. If anything goes wrong, we move in. You have backup. What if they see the backup? I asked. They won't. But I didn't believe her. These people seemed to know everything. How could I trust that they wouldn't see what was obviously there? I parked 3 blocks away from the warehouse, just like instructed. Morrison Street was industrial and dead. Chain-link fences, broken windows, graffiti, the kind of place where crimes happened and nobody asked questions. The kind of place where a man could pay $500,000 and still lose everything. I got out of the car with the duffel bag and walked toward the warehouse. Each step felt like a betrayal of Violet. Like I was walking toward a trap. Like I was playing directly into someone's hands. But what choice did I have? The south entrance was exactly where they said it would be. I placed the duffel bag on the ground and stepped back, just like the instructions said. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. That's when I heard the voice in my earpiece. We have visual on 3 suspects approaching your position. Hold steady. 3 suspects. The kidnappers. They were coming to collect the money. And then, according to the plan, they would lead us to where Violet was being held. But plans have a way of falling apart. The first shot came from somewhere I didn't expect. Not from the warehouse. From above. From the roof of the adjacent building. A clean, professional shot that took down one of the 3 men approaching the money bag. Shots fired. Paige screamed in my earpiece. We have an unknown shooter. The warehouse erupted into chaos. 2 more shots. Another suspect down. The 3rd man scrambled, trying to run, but before he could move 5 feet, a figure dropped from the roof with lethal grace and took him down with brutal efficiency. This figure was tall, wearing dark tactical gear, moving like someone trained in ways most people couldn't fathom. A military operative, a spec ops soldier, someone who'd killed before and would kill again without hesitation. The figure turned and saw me standing there, alone, with the duffel bag between us. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then the figure moved toward the warehouse entrance. disappearing into the darkness. "Don't move," Paige yelled. "Stay where you are." But I couldn't stay still. My wife was in there. I knew it. I could feel it. And this stranger, this mysterious figure who'd just taken down 3 trained kidnappers like they were children, was walking directly toward her. I ran after them. The warehouse interior was a maze of shipping containers and shadows. The figure had disappeared into the darkness, but I could hear movement. Footsteps. The sound of a chain breaking. A voice, Violet's voice, crying out in relief and confusion. I found her in a basement, chained to a wall, disheveled, terrified, but alive. Our baby was alive. The figure stood next to her, unfastening the chains with careful precision. "It's okay," the figure said to Violet. Their voice was rough but gentle. "You're safe now. I've got you." Violet looked at this stranger like she recognized them, like she knew exactly who they were. And then the figure turned to me, and I saw their face clearly for the first time. I didn't recognize them, but the way Violet was looking at them, the way she reached for them instead of for me, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just a rescue. This was something else entirely. Something that was about to destroy everything I thought I knew about my wife. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fluorescent lights. Violet was in a private room on the obstetrics floor, hooked up to monitors that tracked her vital signs and our baby's heartbeat. She'd been examined, cleaned, and declared physically unharmed, a miracle given what she'd endured. But her eyes told a different story. They told me she was broken in ways medicine couldn't fix. I sat in the chair beside her bed, watching her sleep, trying to understand how everything had shattered so completely in 48 hours. Detective Oliver found me in the hospital cafeteria at 6 a.m., 2 cups of bad coffee in his hands. He looked like he hadn't slept. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were darker than before. "We need to talk," he said, sitting across from me without asking permission. "How is she?" I asked, stalling. "Physically? She'll recover. Psychologically? That's going to take longer." He set 1 coffee in front of me. "But that's not why I'm here. We've been digging into the men we found at the warehouse. The 3-year mystery rescuer took down. And they're connected to someone named Tristan Kovac. Russian-American. Operates out of the city. Has fingers in a lot of illegal pies. Money laundering, extortion, trafficking. Serious criminal enterprise." The name hit me like a physical blow. Tristan, the man from Violet's past. The man she'd supposedly left behind years ago. What's his connection to Violet? I asked, already dreading the answer. Oliver pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was Violet, but not the Violet I knew. This was Violet from years ago, thinner, younger, dressed in expensive clothes at what looked like a high-end restaurant. She was sitting across from a man with sharp features and colder eyes than I'd ever seen. His hand was on her arm in a way that suggested possession rather than affection. "That's from 5 years ago," Oliver said, "before you and Violet got together. But here's where it gets interesting." He swiped to another photo. This one was more recent, maybe 3 months old. It was Violet again, but this time she was meeting with Tristan at a hotel. Not a restaurant, a hotel. And she was smiling in a way I recognized, the way she smiled when she was happy, the way she smiled at me before everything changed. My hands started shaking. "We've been tracking Tristan's movements," Oliver continued. "He was in the city 3 months ago, right around the time your wife started acting differently, right around the time certain financial transactions started appearing in your accounts that didn't match up with her normal spending." "What are you saying?" I whispered, even though I already knew. "I'm saying your wife might not have been kidnapped by accident. I'm saying she might have been kidnapped as part of a plan between her and Tristan. A plan that went sideways." "That's insane," I said, but my voice was hollow. Because it wasn't insane. It made perfect sense. It explained the secret of phone calls. The distance. The way she'd asked me about my schedule. The way she'd seemed distracted, like part of her was somewhere else. "Is it?" Oliver leaned forward. "Your wife was having an affair with Tristan Kovac. We have hotel receipts, credit card statements, witness testimony from hotel staff. She was meeting him regularly. And 3 weeks ago, The meeting stopped abruptly. The same week she came home and told you she was scaling back her social life because of the pregnancy. I felt the world tilt. Everything I thought I knew about Violet, about our marriage, about our life together, was collapsing under the weight of this new reality. Why would he kidnap her if they were together? I asked. That's the question, isn't it? Oliver said. Either this was a setup that went wrong, or it was leverage for something else. Either way, your wife knows more than she's telling us. I went back to Violet's hospital room and stared at her while she slept. How many times had she lied to me? How many times had she kissed me with lips that had just kissed someone else? How many times had she held me while thinking about another man? She woke up around noon. Her eyes found mine immediately, and I saw fear flash across her face. She knew. Somehow, she knew that I knew. We need to talk, I said quietly. Not now, she said, turning her face away. I'm tired. I need to sleep. Now, I said, and my voice was harder than it had ever been with her. I need you to tell me about Tristan. She went completely still. Her hand moved to her belly, protecting our baby the way she couldn't protect me from the truth. There's nothing to tell, she said. Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything. I know about the hotel meetings. I know about the affair. I know he's connected to the people who took you. So you're going to sit here and tell me exactly what's been happening. Violet's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just stared at the ceiling like she was looking at something far away. I made a mistake, she said finally. Years ago, when I was with Tristan, I agreed to something. Something stupid. He wanted me to marry someone, to get close to them, for business reasons. I said no. I left him. I met you. I thought it was over. My stomach twisted. He wanted you to marry me? On purpose. It was a long time ago. I said no. I meant it. I didn't do what he asked. But he didn't let it go, I said, understanding dawning on me. He came back. He found you. He wanted to collect on a debt you didn't even owe. Violet finally looked at me, and the pain in her eyes was so raw it made it hard to breathe. He told me if I didn't help him, he'd hurt our baby. He said he had people watching us. He said he'd make sure our child suffered. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. So you agreed to meet him, I said. So I agreed to listen to what he wanted. But I never agreed to betray you. I never agreed to anything that would hurt us. I swear. Then why were you smiling in those photos? Why did you look happy? She didn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. She had been happy, not because she'd wanted to betray me, but because some part of her had missed the excitement, the danger, the version of herself she'd been before she became a wife and a mother-to-be. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the city was moving on like nothing had changed. Like my marriage wasn't dissolving in real time. Like my wife hadn't just admitted to cheating on me while carrying our child. The man who saved you, I said, not turning around. The one at the warehouse. Who was he? There was a long silence. Too long. I don't know, Violet finally said. But her voice told me she was lying. And that's when I understood the real truth, the thing that would unravel everything. This wasn't about Tristan kidnapping Violet for money. This was about someone else entirely. Someone who'd been waiting for the right moment. Someone with their own agenda. Someone connected to Violet in a way that made them willing to kill to protect her. And I had no idea who they were, or why they decided that my wife's life was worth saving. 3 days after Violet came home from the hospital, Detective Oliver showed up at my house with a folder. He didn't call first. He didn't ask permission. He just knocked on my door at 8 a.m. with the expression of a man who'd uncovered something that was going to destroy my life. Violet was upstairs sleeping. The pregnancy had taken its toll, and her doctor had prescribed bed rest for the next 2 weeks. I hadn't told her about Oliver's visits. I hadn't told her about the investigation. I'd just been sitting in my living room, staring at nothing, trying to figure out who my wife actually was. We identified your mystery rescuer, Oliver said, sitting on my couch without being invited. He opened the folder and slid a photo across the coffee table. The man staring back at me was early 30s, military-grade fit, with scars on his knuckles and eyes that had seen combat. His name was written underneath, Colonel Hunter McKay, retired Navy SEAL, dishonorable discharge, wanted for vigilante activity in 3 states. He's a ghost, Oliver continued. Officially, he doesn't exist. No current residence, no bank accounts, no digital footprint. But unofficially, he's been active in the criminal underworld for the past 5 years, taking out high-level targets, silencing witnesses, executing people who shouldn't be executed. I stared at the photo. Why would someone like that help Violet? That's what I asked myself, Oliver said. So I did some digging. Turns out Colonel McKay and your wife have a history. A long history. My blood went cold. What kind of history? I asked, even though I didn't want to know the answer. Oliver pulled out more photos. These ones made my chest tight. Violet and Hunter McKay. Together. Not just meeting, actually together. His arm around her. Her head on his shoulder. Her hand on his chest. Photos spanning years. Going back further than I'd realized. They met when she was 19, Oliver explained. Before Tristan even. She was studying international relations at Georgetown. He was stationed nearby as a SEAL. They had a relationship that lasted 3 years. According to our sources, it was serious. Very serious. He wanted to marry her. She wanted out of the military life. They broke up. She moved on. He deployed. And they didn't have contact again until 6 months ago. 6 months. Right around the time Violet started acting differently. She reached out to him, Oliver said. Not him reaching out to her. She called him. She told him about Tristan's threats. She asked for his help. Help with what? I demanded. Help with a lot of things, Oliver said quietly. First, help getting Tristan to back off. But there's more. Your wife has been involved in something bigger than just an affair. She's been involved in intelligence work. Informal intelligence work. For people who operate in the gray areas of the law. I felt like I was drowning. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that your wife isn't just a housewife. She's not just someone who got caught up in a bad situation. She's someone who made a choice. A deliberate choice. To involve herself with dangerous people. And one of those people was Hunter McKay. Oliver pulled out another file. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Deposits and withdrawals that didn't match up with anything Violet had ever told me about. Your wife has been receiving payments, Oliver said. $50,000 a month for the past 6 months. All from shell companies. All connected to international crime syndicates. She's been working for them. As an asset. As leverage. As someone willing to do things most people wouldn't do. I couldn't breathe. Why? Why would she do that? Money. Power. Excitement. A chance to be something more than a suburban wife waiting for her husband to come home from work. According to what we've uncovered, she volunteered for this. She knew what she was getting into. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the photographs. Because now I understood. This wasn't about Violet being a victim. This was about Violet being a player. An actor in a game much bigger than I'd realized. The kidnapping, I said slowly. It wasn't random. No, Oliver agreed. It was a setup. Tristan was supposed to take her. He was supposed to hold her for ransom. But the plan was for Hunter McKay to swoop in and rescue her. That would buy Violet credibility with the organization she's been working for. It would make her valuable. It would move her up the ladder. But something went wrong, I said, pieces clicking together in my mind. Something went wrong, Oliver confirmed. The men Tristan hired went off script. They got rough with her. They threatened the baby. And Hunter McKay responded with more force than was planned. He killed all 3 of them. He exposed himself. And now we have a situation where a wanted fugitive has been actively involved in a kidnapping case that's under federal investigation. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the world looked normal. Cars driving past. People walking their dogs. Life continuing like my entire reality hadn't just collapsed. There's something else, Oliver said. I could hear him standing up, closing the folder. We found communications between your wife and Hunter McKay. Text messages. Phone calls. They've been in constant contact. And based on the content of those communications, I don't think this is over. I think they're planning something. Something bigger. And I think Tristan Kovac is going to be caught in the middle of it. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because upstairs, my wife was sleeping peacefully in our bed, and I had no idea who she actually was. I'm going to need you to cooperate with us, Oliver said. I need you to record conversations with your wife. I need you to find out what she's planning with McKay. I need you to help us before this situation spirals completely out of control. No, I said flatly. No. Oliver sounded surprised. If I do that, I'm betraying her. And I've already lost too much to lose my integrity too. Your wife has already betrayed you, Oliver said coldly. Multiple times. In multiple ways. The least you can do is help us contain the damage. He left me the folder and his card. He told me to call when I was ready to cooperate. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with the truth about my marriage. I didn't go back upstairs for an hour. I sat in my living room, staring at photos of my wife with another man. A man who'd been willing to kill for her. A man she'd called when her life got complicated. A man she'd chosen over me in the moment it mattered most. When I finally went upstairs, Violet was awake. She was sitting up in bed, scrolling through her phone. She looked up at me with those beautiful, deceitful eyes, and I saw the truth written all over her face. She knew I knew. Who is Hunter McKay? I asked quietly. Her face went pale. Her hand moved to her belly. And in that moment, I realized something that would change everything. The baby she was carrying might not be mine, and the man she was protecting might be the father. The silence in our bedroom was louder than any argument could ever be. Violet stared at me like a cornered animal, her hand still protective over her belly. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to explain. She just sat there, and her silence was the most devastating confession I'd ever heard. How long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice cracked. How long have you been with him? And don't lie to me. Not anymore. I can't take any more lies. Violet's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just stared at me like she was making a calculation, deciding how much truth she could afford to give me. We reconnected 6 months ago, she finally said. He found me. I didn't reach out to him first like the detective said. Hunter found me, and we started talking again, and it just happened. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it. But it happened. And the baby? I asked, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. I don't know, she whispered. I genuinely don't know. The timing is right for it to be yours, but nothing. But maybe. But there was a possibility that the child Violet was carrying, the child I'd been preparing to raise, the child I'd already loved despite never meeting, might not be mine. I walked to the window and looked out at the street below. A man was jogging past with his dog. A normal life. A life I didn't have anymore. Why would you do this? I asked. Why would you sleep with another man while you were carrying my child? Because he made me feel alive, Violet said, and the raw honesty in her voice was somehow worse than a lie would have been. Because my life with you felt safe, but small. Because Hunter made me feel like I mattered in a way that you never could. Because I'm a terrible person who made terrible choices. What's your connection to Tristan? I demanded. Why would he agree to kidnap you? Violet took a shaky breath. Tristan and I were never really done. After Hunter and I broke up, Tristan came back into my life. He offered me money. Lots of money. All I had to do was gather information. Information about my husband's company. Information about business deals. Information that could be leveraged. You were spying on me, I said flatly. I was desperate, she said. My family was struggling financially. My parents were about to lose their house. Tristan offered a way out. He said all I had to do was listen. All I had to do was pay attention. He said no one would get hurt. But Hunter found out, I said, understanding now. And he decided he needed to protect you. He decided he still loved me, Violet corrected. Even after all those years. Even after everything I'd done. He came back into my life, and he told me I needed to get out. He said he'd handle Tristan. He said he'd take care of everything. By kidnapping you? By orchestrating this entire situation. By giving me a way out, Violet said. The kidnapping was supposed to look real. It was supposed to scare me. It was supposed to give me a reason to cut ties with Tristan permanently. Hunter was supposed to rescue me, and then I was supposed to disappear with him. Disappear, I repeated. Leave me. Leave our life. Leave everything. Yes, she said, and the pain in her voice was like a knife. I turned away from the window and looked at my wife, really looked at her. This woman I'd married. This woman I'd planned a future with. This woman was a stranger wearing a familiar face. What changed? I asked. Why didn't you leave with him? Because when I was in that basement, when I was terrified and alone, the only person I thought about was you. Not Hunter. Not Tristan. You. I realized that despite everything I'd done, despite all the lies and the betrayal, I didn't want to lose you. I wanted to come home. I wanted to build a life with you and our baby. But Hunter doesn't want you to stay with me, I said. No, Violet admitted. He doesn't. He's been calling me. He's been telling me this isn't over. He's telling me that he's going to handle Tristan, and then he's going to come back for me. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your wife belongs with me. Accept it, or I'll make you. The threat hung in the air between us. Because now I understood the real situation. This wasn't about money or blackmail or intelligence work. This was about two men fighting over a woman. And my wife was caught between them, torn between the safe life she'd built with me and the dangerous, exciting life that Hunter McKay represented. What does Hunter want? I asked. He wants me to leave you. He wants to take me away from the city. He wants us to disappear and start over somewhere else. Somewhere safe. And what do you want? Violet looked down at her belly. I want my baby to be born safe. I want to know who the father is. I want to be able to look at my child and know whether they're yours or his. I want to live without constantly looking over my shoulder. I want to be forgiven for the things I've done. I can't give you forgiveness, I said quietly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I can give you this. I can help you get through this pregnancy. I can help you deliver this baby. And after that, we figure out what comes next. Hunter won't allow it, Violet said. He's made that clear. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Another text. The husband has 24 hours to sign divorce papers. After that, I'm coming to collect what's mine. I looked at the message, then at my wife, then back at the message. And I understood that this situation was about to get much worse before it got better. Because Hunter McKay wasn't just a vigilante. He was a man obsessed. And obsessed men don't negotiate. They take what they want. And he wanted my wife. Hunter McKay showed up at my house at midnight on a Tuesday. No warning. No phone call. He just appeared in my driveway like a ghost materializing from the darkness. And when I opened the front door, I found him standing there with a gun in one hand and a folder in the other. We need to talk, he said, pushing past me into my living room without waiting for an invitation. I'd never seen him in person before, only in photographs. But seeing him now, standing in my home, wearing tactical gear like he'd just come from a mission, his scarred knuckles gripping the folder like it contained secrets that could burn down the world, I understood why Violet had been drawn to him. He radiated power. He radiated danger. He radiated the kind of certainty that most men never possessed. My wife is upstairs sleeping, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't want her to see you. I don't want her to be scared. She's not scared of me, Hunter said, dropping the folder on my coffee table. Open it. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. All of Tristan Kovac. Meeting with crime bosses. Moving money. Trafficking people. Orchestrating violence. Each photo was time-stamped, dated, documented like evidence for a trial that would never happen. Tristan Kovac has been operating in this city for 15 years, Hunter said, sitting on my couch like he owned it. He's killed at least 40 people that we know of. He's moved millions of dollars through shell corporations and money laundering schemes. He's destroyed families, ruined lives, and operated with complete impunity because he's too connected to prosecute. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because I'm going to kill him, Hunter said flatly. And I need you to understand why. I need you to understand that what's about to happen isn't murder. It's justice." "That's not justice," I said. "That's vigilantism. That's what happens when the system fails," Hunter interrupted. "When the courts are too slow, when the police are too compromised, when a man like Tristan Kovac can operate freely because nobody has the courage to stop him. Someone has to. And that someone is me." I sank into the chair across from him. "Violet won't forgive you for this. She won't stay with you if you kill him. Violet will do whatever I tell her to do," Hunter said with absolute certainty. "Because she knows what I'm capable of. Because she knows that I've already killed for her. Because she knows that I'm the only person in this world who can actually protect her." "You're not protecting her," I said. "You're controlling her. There's a difference." Hunter's eyes went cold. "You think you know her. You think you understand what she needs. But you don't. You gave her safety. I gave her purpose. You gave her comfort. I gave her meaning. She was dying in this life you built for her. I saved her by manipulating her into an affair while she was carrying my child," I said, anger rising in my chest. "By turning her into a spy. By orchestrating a kidnapping that traumatized her and endangered our baby. That kidnapping was supposed to be simple," Hunter said, his jaw tightening. "In and out. Scare her. Free her. Move on." But Tristan's men got rough. They got ideas about keeping her, about using her for other purposes. So I had to accelerate the timeline. I had to take them all down. I had to be more brutal than planned. "You killed 3 men," I said. "I killed 3 predators who were going to hurt a pregnant woman," Hunter corrected. "And I'd do it again." The conviction in his voice was terrifying. This man genuinely believed that he was the hero of this story, that his violence was righteous, that his obsession with Violet was love. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Hunter leaned forward. "I want you to sign the divorce papers. I want you to walk away from Violet and our child, and I want you to do it quietly. No lawyers. No drama. No messy court battles. You disappear, I disappear, and Violet and I start a new life somewhere far away from here. And if I refuse, then I kill you too," Hunter said with the same casual certainty he'd used to describe killing Tristan's men. "And I make it look like Tristan did it. I frame him. I bury the evidence. And I take Violet anyway." Before I could respond, Violet appeared at the top of the stairs. She was wearing the maternity nightgown I'd bought her, her belly prominent beneath the fabric, her hair tangled from sleep. When she saw Hunter, something shifted in her expression. Fear and desire tangled together in a way that made my stomach turn. "Hunter," she breathed, coming down the stairs toward him. "Don't," I said, but my voice sounded weak, defeated. Hunter stood and caught Violet as she reached the bottom of the stairs. He pulled her into an embrace that was both tender and possessive, his hand cradling the back of her head like she was precious cargo. "I came to collect you," he said softly. "We're leaving tonight. Pack a bag. Don't bring anything you can't carry." "I can't," Violet whispered, but she didn't pull away from him. The baby comes with us," Hunter said. "We'll find a private doctor. We'll make sure everything is safe. But we're not staying here. This life is over." I watched my wife look at me over Hunter's shoulder. I saw the apology in her eyes. I saw the regret. But I also saw the choice she was about to make. "Don't go," I said, not to her, but to the universe, to fate, to whatever force had conspired to bring us all to this moment. But Violet was already moving toward the stairs, already packing her life into a bag, already choosing the dangerous man over the safe one. And I understood then that Hunter was right about one thing. Violet had never wanted safety. She'd wanted to be saved by someone willing to burn down the world for her. And Hunter McKay was exactly that kind of man. Violet left with Hunter that night. I watched from my bedroom window as they loaded her bag into a black SUV parked on the street. She didn't look back at the house. She didn't look back at me. She just climbed into the passenger seat and disappeared into the darkness, taking my unborn child with her. I called Detective Oliver immediately. She left voluntarily. Oliver said when he arrived at my house 2 hours later, "There's nothing we can do. She's an adult. She can make her own choices, even if those choices are catastrophically stupid. He threatened to kill me. I said. He said he'd kill me and frame Tristan if I didn't let her go. Do you have that threat recorded? Oliver asked. No. He said it face to face. Then it's he said. You said. Oliver replied with the frustration of a man who'd spent too long in a system designed to fail people like us. Without evidence, without witnesses, I can't arrest him. But here's what I can tell you. Hunter McKay is about to make a move against Tristan Kovac. And when he does, everything's going to explode. For days later, Tristan Kovac's body was found in an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. He'd been tortured, systematically, methodically. His hands were broken. His ribs were shattered. His face was unrecognizable. The medical examiner said he'd been alive for most of it, that he'd suffered for hours before finally bleeding out. It was Hunter's signature. Clean. Professional. Brutal. Detective Oliver brought me the crime scene photos, and I forced myself to look at them, because I needed to understand what Violet's savior was actually capable of. I needed to see the reality behind the romantic narrative of a soldier protecting the woman he loved. He's escalating, Oliver said, watching my reaction. First the three men at the warehouse. Now this. He's not trying to hide anymore. He's sending a message. What message? I asked, though I already knew. That nobody touches what's his. That Violet is his property now, and that anyone who tries to interfere will end up like Tristan. 2 weeks passed with no contact from Violet. No phone calls. No messages. Nothing. I filed a missing persons report, but the police weren't interested. She'd left voluntarily. She wasn't being held against her will. There was nothing they could do. I hired a private investigator named Quinn. She was expensive and thorough, and she found them 3 days later in a rental property upstate. A cabin in the mountains. Isolated. Remote. Perfect for a man who wanted to disappear. There's a problem, Quinn told me over the phone. Your wife's in active labor. She's been in labor for 6 hours. And there's no hospital nearby. Your friend Hunter is trying to manage it alone. My heart stopped. The baby's coming tonight, Quinn said. With or without medical intervention. If something goes wrong, if there are complications, there's nothing he can do out there. I didn't think. I just moved. I drove 3 hours upstate to a cabin I'd never seen before, following Quinn's GPS coordinates. The sun was setting as I arrived, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The cabin was dark except for a single light burning in one window. I could hear Violet screaming from outside. I burst through the door without knocking, and the scene that greeted me was something out of a nightmare. Violet was on a bed, her legs spread, her body convulsing with contractions. Hunter was between her legs, his hands covered in blood, his face pale with panic. He looked up at me with an expression I'd never expected to see on his face. Terror. Help me, he said. Not a command. A plea. I don't know what I'm doing. Something's wrong. The baby's not coming. Something's wrong. I'd taken a birthing class with Violet months ago. I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't trained for this. But I was a husband whose wife needed help. And in that moment, the affair and the betrayal and the kidnapping and everything else fell away. I called 911. No signal. I ran outside, found a bar of signal on a hillside, and called again. This time it went through. The operator told me an ambulance was 40 minutes away. She walked me through what to do. Push, I told Violet, holding her hand. You have to push. I can't, she sobbed. It hurts too much. I can't. You can't, I said. Our baby is almost here. Push. Hunter stood back, and I saw something crack in him. He'd been capable of killing without hesitation, but faced with the messy reality of birth, the blood, the pain, the vulnerability of it, he became human in a way I hadn't thought possible. Our daughter was born at 11:47 p.m., 3 minutes before the ambulance arrived. She was beautiful and terrifying and perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces of new life, with Violet's eyes and a cry that sounded like survival itself. The paramedics rushed in and stabilized both mother and baby. They were loading Violet into the ambulance when she reached for my hand. "The baby's yours," she whispered. I did the math. I know she's yours. I looked at this tiny human I'd created, and I felt something shift in my chest. Forgiveness wasn't there yet. Understanding wasn't there yet. But love, fierce, protective, unconditional love, was there. Hunter watched from across the room, and I saw the moment he understood. He'd lost. He'd lost everything. He had Violet, but he didn't have the baby. He had the woman, but not the future he'd imagined. The loss broke something in him. As the ambulance pulled away, I turned back to face him. "What happens now?" I asked. Hunter's eyes were hollow. "Now I disappear. I leave you both alone. I accept that some things can't be taken by force." "And Violet?" I asked. "Violet chooses," he said quietly. "I won't force her anymore. I can't. Not now. Not after this." But we both knew the truth. Violet would choose safety over danger. She would choose the father of her child over the man who'd tried to possess her. Hunter walked out of that cabin and disappeared into the night. And I was left holding my daughter, waiting for my wife to come back to me, hoping that somehow we could rebuild what had been broken. 3 months after our daughter was born, I got a call from Detective Oliver. His voice was different, harder, colder, like he was about to deliver news that would shatter whatever fragile peace I'd managed to build. "I need you to come to the precinct," he said. "We found something. Something about your wife." The police station smelled like burnt coffee and regret. Oliver sat across from me in an interrogation room, not because I was a suspect, but because he needed privacy for what he was about to tell me. "We've been tracking Hunter McKay's movements since the night your daughter was born," Oliver began. "Financial transactions, cell phone pings, surveillance footage, and we found something that doesn't add up." He pulled out a stack of photographs. They were time-stamped going back 6 months. All of them showed Hunter and Violet together, but not the way I'd imagined. Not as lovers stealing moments. They were business meetings. Serious meetings. Meetings with other men, crime bosses, money laundering specialists, human traffickers. "Your wife isn't a victim caught in the middle of a dangerous situation," Oliver said quietly. "She's a player. She's been working with Hunter for at least a year, maybe longer." My mouth went dry. "What do you mean, working with him?" "I mean they've been partners. Criminals. They've been orchestrating kidnappings together. Extortion schemes. They've been identifying wealthy targets, kidnapping them or their families, collecting ransom, and disappearing before we can build a case. Your wife has been the inside person. She gets close to targets. She learns their routines. She identifies vulnerabilities. Then Hunter moves in." "That's impossible," I said, but my voice was hollow. Because it wasn't impossible. It was exactly the kind of thing Violet would do if she was desperate enough. If she was ambitious enough. If she wanted to be something more than a housewife. "The kidnapping of your wife," Oliver continued, "wasn't a kidnapping at all. It was theater. It was a cover story. Tristan Kovac was supposed to play the villain. Hunter was supposed to play the hero. And you were supposed to believe that your wife was an innocent victim caught in the middle. But she orchestrated the entire thing." I felt the room tilt. Why? Why would she do that? Because she needed to disappear from the radar. She needed a reason to go underground. She needed to create a narrative where she was a victim so nobody would suspect her of being a perpetrator. And she needed to use you to access your company's financial records. She needed to know about a client you were working with, a billionaire who was about to travel to a remote location, a billionaire who was vulnerable. Oliver pulled out another file. Inside was information about a kidnapping that had happened 2 weeks ago in Costa Rica. A wealthy businessman taken from his hotel. A ransom demand of $10 million. Payment made. The businessman released. No arrest. No suspects. The case had gone cold. That was Hunter and Violet, Oliver said. Your wife helped plan it. She provided the intelligence. She made sure the target was vulnerable. And she walked away with $2 million. I stared at the file, unable to process what I was hearing. This is speculation. You don't have proof. We have bank records, Oliver said. We have communications. We have witness testimony from people involved in the Costa Rica operation who've agreed to cooperate in exchange for immunity. Your wife isn't just complicit in this. She's the mastermind. She's the person organizing the operations. Hunter's the muscle, but Violet's the brain. Where is she? I demanded. That's where it gets complicated, Oliver said. We've been unable to locate her or Hunter for the past week. We believe they're planning another operation. We believe they're about to take down another target. And we believe that target might be someone connected to you. My blood went cold. Connected to me? Your father, Oliver said quietly. Your father's company just signed a multi-million-dollar contract. He's traveling to Dubai next week. He'll be vulnerable. We think that's your wife's next target. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My own wife. My own wife was planning to kidnap my father for ransom. She was planning to terrorize my family. She was planning to destroy everything because she was bored with the life I'd given her. Because she wanted excitement and danger and the kind of purpose that came from committing crimes. What do you need from me? I asked. We need you to go home, Oliver said. We need you to act like you don't know any of this. We need you to wait for your wife to contact you. And when she does, we need you to wear a wire. I left the police station in a daze. I drove home on autopilot, my mind spinning. I walked through the front door of my house, expecting to find an empty space. Instead, I found Violet in the living room, holding our daughter. She looked up at me, and I saw it immediately, the calculation in her eyes, the assessment of how much I knew, the calculation of whether I was a threat. Hi, she said, her voice carefully neutral. You got home late. Detective Oliver called me, I said, watching her face. He told me about Costa Rica. He told me about Hunter. He told me about my father. Violet's expression didn't change, but her grip on our daughter tightened. It's not what you think, she said quietly. Then what is it? I demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife is a criminal. It looks like the kidnapping was a setup. It looks like everything, every single thing between us, was a lie. Violet stood up and walked to the window, cradling our daughter against her chest. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet I almost couldn't hear her. I've been in contact with the FBI, she said. For the past 3 weeks, I've been cooperating with them. I've been wearing a wire. I've been recording conversations with Hunter. I've been building a case against him. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet again. What? Hunter's dangerous, Violet said, turning to face me. Darker than I realized. He wasn't just rescuing me from Tristan. He was using me. He was grooming me. He was turning me into something I didn't want to be. And when our daughter was born, when I held her in my arms, I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't raise our child in that world. I couldn't be that person. So you cooperated with the FBI? I said slowly. So I cooperated with the FBI, Violet confirmed. Hunter doesn't know, but they're building a case against him. They're going to arrest him. They're going to prosecute him. And I'm going to testify against him. And what about you? I asked. What about your crimes? What about Costa Rica? I'm taking a deal, Violet said. Immunity in exchange for cooperation. I'm going to testify. I'm going to help them build cases against every criminal organization Hunter's connected to. And then I'm going to try to rebuild my life. With you, if you'll let me. I looked at my wife holding my daughter, and I didn't know who she was anymore. I didn't know if she was a criminal or a victim. I didn't know if she was telling the truth now or if this was just another con, another manipulation, another layer of betrayal. All I knew was that nothing would ever be simple again. The trial lasted 4 months. Hunter McKay sat in the courtroom every single day, his face a mask of controlled rage. His lawyer, a shark named Preston who defended 3 other operatives with questionable pasts, tried everything. He questioned Violet's credibility. He suggested she was a spurned lover seeking revenge. He painted her as a criminal trying to escape justice by sacrificing a man she'd once loved. None of it worked. Violet testified with clinical precision. She laid out every operation, every target, every payment, every moment Hunter had crossed the line from vigilante into something darker, into someone who used violence not as a tool, but as entertainment. She described how he'd started enjoying the torture, how he'd spent hours with Tristan Kovac just to hear him scream, how he'd told her that suffering was the only language criminals understood. The prosecutor, a woman named Fiona with 30 years of courtroom experience, built an airtight case. Financial records, communication logs, witness testimony from people in the criminal underworld who'd agreed to cooperate. Video evidence of Hunter executing targets with clinical efficiency. By the time closing arguments came around, the outcome was inevitable. Hunter McKay was convicted on 18 counts of murder, extortion, money laundering, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. As they led him out of the courtroom, he looked directly at Violet and mouthed 2 words, "You're dead." Federal marshals immediately placed her in protective custody. My father hired the best family law attorney in the city, a man named Colin who'd handled high-profile cases for decades. The divorce proceedings were contentious, but ultimately straightforward. Violet wanted custody of our daughter. I wanted custody of our daughter. The judge, after reviewing all the evidence and hearing testimony from both of us, decided something unexpected. This court finds that while Mrs. Hudson engaged in serious criminal activity, her cooperation with law enforcement and her demonstrated commitment to reforming her life suggest that she poses no threat to the minor child, the judge ruled. However, this court also finds that Mr. Hudson has been the primary caregiver during the period following the child's birth and has demonstrated consistent, stable parenting. Therefore, this court awards primary physical custody to Mr. Hudson, with generous visitation rights to Mrs. Hudson. It was a compromise that satisfied no one but protected our daughter. Violet was released from protective custody 6 months later, on the condition that she remain under FBI supervision for 5 years. She moved into an apartment 2 blocks away from my house, close enough to see our daughter, far enough to maintain distance between us. I'd filed for divorce, and the paperwork was finalized on a Tuesday in spring. I remember sitting in the judge's chambers, watching Violet sign the documents with a steady hand. She didn't cry. She didn't beg me to reconsider. She just signed and handed the pen back to the clerk like she was signing away a piece of her own soul. Custody arrangements were established. Violet had our daughter every Wednesday evening and all day Saturday. On those days, I tried not to think about where they were or what they were doing. I tried to exist in a space where I wasn't consumed by the anxiety of wondering if my ex-wife had reverted to her criminal ways, if she was using our daughter as leverage for something, if the woman I thought I knew was actually someone entirely different. 6 months into the new arrangement, Violet asked to meet me for coffee. Not at my house. Not at a neutral location with lawyers present. Just coffee. Just 2 people who'd once loved each other and had blown that love to pieces. We sat in a quiet cafe on a rainy afternoon. She looked different. Thinner. Older. Like the weight of what she'd done had aged her in ways that time alone couldn't explain. "I'm writing a book," she said without preamble. "About everything. The affair with Tristan, the work with Hunter, the kidnapping, all of it. I'm going to tell the truth, and I'm going to donate all the proceeds to victims' advocacy organizations." "Why would you do that?" I asked. "Because I need to own what I did," Violet said. "Not hide from it. Not minimize it. Own it. The women who were kidnapped by Hunter and me, they deserve to have their stories told. They deserve to have their pain acknowledged. And I deserve to spend the rest of my life trying to make amends for causing it." "That won't fix anything," I said. "That won't undo the damage." "No," Violet agreed. "But it's a start. It's the only start I know how to make." We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, the rain fell steadily, washing the city clean in a way that seemed impossibly hopeful. "Our daughter asked me yesterday why you and I weren't together anymore," Violet said quietly. "She's 3 years old, and she doesn't understand why her mother and father live in different houses." I didn't know how to explain it to her. How do you tell a child that her parents were toxic for each other? That sometimes love isn't enough? That sometimes the people we choose to be together with can hurt us in ways that are unforgivable? You tell her the truth. I said. When she's old enough to understand. You tell her that her mother made mistakes, and her father made mistakes, and they both did the best they could to protect her and love her despite those mistakes. Violet's eyes filled with tears. Can you forgive me? Not forget. Not excuse. But forgive. I thought about the man I'd been before all of this. The naive husband who'd believed that love was enough to sustain a marriage. The fool who'd missed the signs that his wife was drowning in a life that felt too small. I'm working on it, I said finally. Some days I can. Some days I can't. But I'm working on it. 2 years later, Violet's book was published. It became a bestseller. More importantly, it led to the conviction of 3 other crime organizations that had been operating in the shadows. Her testimony, combined with the evidence in her book, helped victims reclaim their lives. She never remarried. She never dated anyone seriously. She dedicated herself to raising our daughter and to the work of restitution. And I slowly, over years, came to understand that forgiveness wasn't about erasing what had happened. It was about accepting that people could be flawed and harmful and still deserve a chance at redemption. It was about recognizing that my wife had chosen to become better, even when becoming better meant facing the consequences of her actions. Our daughter grew up with 2 parents who lived separately but loved her equally. She grew up knowing the story of her family, the lies and betrayals and darkness, but also the resilience and growth that came after. And she grew up understanding that people were complicated, that love could be both beautiful and destructive, that truth mattered, even when truth was painful. That was the real justice. Not punishment, not revenge, but the slow, painful process of becoming someone worthy of forgiveness. 5 years later, I stood in my daughter's kindergarten classroom, watching her paint a picture with fierce concentration. She was 6 now, old enough to remember fragments of chaos, young enough that those fragments felt like dreams rather than reality. Her painting was a house with 2 doors. One door was red, one door was blue. A stick figure stood between them, holding both their hands. That's you, Daddy, she said, pointing at the figure. And that's Mommy's door and your door, but you're holding both our hands. I felt something crack open in my chest, not with pain, but with the kind of bittersweet understanding that only comes after years of healing. Her teacher, a woman named Ruby, smiled at me knowingly. She'd heard the story. Everyone in the school had heard pieces of the story. Divorce was common, but divorce wrapped in kidnapping, criminal conspiracy, and federal prosecution was considerably more memorable. That evening, I sat with Violet on my porch while our daughter played in the yard. We did this sometimes now, not as husband and wife, not even as close friends, but as co-parents who'd learned to exist in the same space without tearing each other apart. I've been offered a position, Violet said quietly, working with a nonprofit that helps trafficking victims. It's in another city, about 4 hours away. My stomach tightened. How long? I haven't accepted yet, she said. I wanted to talk to you first, to figure out what's best for our daughter. What's best for her is having both her parents in her life, I said. But what's best for you matters too. You can't spend the rest of your life in penance, Violet. You have to actually live. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much and survived anyway. I didn't think you'd say that. 5 years ago, I couldn't have, I admitted. But 5 years changes things. It changes you. And watching you change, actually change, not just perform change for the cameras, that matters to me. Do you ever think about what could have been? Violet asked. If I'd never met Tristan again? If I'd never called Hunter? If I'd just stayed the person you married? Every day, I said. But I've also learned that what could have been is a trap. It keeps you locked in a fantasy version of the past. The only thing that matters is what actually happened and what we do now. Our daughter ran over, covered in dirt, holding a flower she'd pulled from the garden. She handed it to me, then to Violet, then back to me again, unable to decide which parent deserved it more. So we did what we always did. We held it between us, 3 hands on one small, fragile stem. Mommy, are you coming home soon? Our daughter asked. I have my own home, sweetheart, Violet said gently. But Daddy's home is always home too. That's how families work sometimes. Especially families like ours. Our family is weird. Our daughter said matter-of-factly. Yes, I agreed. Our family is very weird. But we love each other anyway. The real story this is where I need to pause and speak directly to you, the person listening to this story. Because the real story isn't about the crimes or the betrayal or even the justice. The real story is about what happens after. When the headlines fade. When the trial ends. When you're left with a broken marriage and a child and the impossible task of moving forward. I spent 5 years angry. I spent 5 years believing that my wife was a villain. That Hunter McKay was a villain. That I was the only innocent person in this tragedy. But somewhere along the way, I realized something that changed everything. We were all victims of our own choices. Violet made terrible choices. She betrayed me. She committed crimes. She hurt innocent people. But she also had the courage to face what she'd done and try to become better. That's not an excuse. That's not forgiveness. That's just the complicated, messy reality of human beings trying to do better after they've done terrible things. Hunter McKay made even more terrible choices. He committed violence in the name of justice, and somewhere along the way, justice became indistinguishable from revenge. He destroyed lives. He destroyed families. And he's spending the rest of his life in a prison cell, which is exactly where he belongs. But I also made a choice. I chose to stay angry for 5 years. I chose to believe that my life was ruined beyond repair. I chose to see my marriage as a complete failure instead of as a complicated human experience that taught me profound lessons about trust, betrayal, forgiveness, and resilience. Where are you watching from? I want to know. Where are you right now listening to this story? Are you in your car? Your bedroom? Your kitchen? Are you someone who's been through betrayal? Someone trying to decide whether to forgive or walk away? Someone wondering if love can survive infidelity and deception? Comment below and tell me your city. Tell me your country. Tell me where you're hearing this story from. And more importantly, tell me, what kind of stories do you want to hear? Do you want more betrayal stories like this one? Do you want revenge thrillers where justice is served cold and merciless? Do you want stories of redemption and healing? Do you want tales of dark secrets and shocking twists? Do you want stories about families torn apart and slowly stitched back together? Comment below and tell me exactly what stories resonate with you. Tell me what keeps you awake at night. Tell me what makes your heart race. And I promise you, I will bring you stories that match that energy. The final truth: this story doesn't have a neat ending. It doesn't have the satisfaction of complete revenge or total redemption. It has something more real, more complicated, more human. It has acceptance. Violet took the job. She works 4 hours away now, helping trafficking victims rebuild their lives. Every Wednesday evening and Saturday, she comes back to the city, and our daughter runs into her arms with the unself-conscious joy that only children possess. We share custody. We share responsibility. We share the complicated legacy of what we built and what we destroyed. I've learned to trust again, but carefully. I've learned that love isn't enough on its own, that commitment, honesty, and daily choice matter just as much. I'm dating someone now, a woman named Daphne who knows my entire story and chooses to be with me anyway. Violet has found peace in her work. Not happiness exactly. That might be too much to ask, but purpose. She's helped 73 trafficking victims restart their lives. She's testified in 8 criminal trials. She's donated every penny from her book to victim advocacy organizations. And our daughter? She grows up knowing that her family is different. She grows up knowing that love is messy and complicated and sometimes requires forgiveness. She grows up understanding that people are capable of both terrible things and profound redemption. That's the story. That's the real ending. Not triumph, not tragedy, but the slow, painful, beautiful process of learning to live with what we've been through and who we've become. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, revenge thrillers, and epic tales of emotional justice. Comment below Tell me your city and country. Tell me what kind of stories you want to hear next. Do you prefer dark revenge? Do you prefer redemption arcs? Do you prefer shocking twists and betrayals? Tell me, and I will bring you stories that match your passion. I'll be back with another thriller, another revenge story, another tale of betrayal that will keep you up at night. Until then, take care of yourself. And remember, sometimes the greatest strength isn't in getting revenge. It's in choosing to heal. See you next time.